Salutations, ladies and gentlemen. The Knife Raven back again with another video. And in today's video, or today's second video, I should say, I will be talking about another French knife. However, unlike the first French knife, this one, I would say, is a lot more sophisticated and luxurious. And that would be this. This is a leather pouch, a very nice one at that. But this is the Issard Rouennais. I'm probably mispronouncing that. But it is a traditional French knife that apparently translates to the cow's tail. And it is a regional knife. Now, France and Italy are very well known for their regional knives, and they have dozens of them. It's nearly impossible to keep track of them all. But this is one of France's regional knives, known as the cow's tail. And it is often used as a picnic knife because of its slender, slicey appearance. And I'd say it's quite good at that. Very good for cutting food, piece of cheese, some salami, some fruit. And yeah, today we'll be taking a look at this knife and seeing whether or not it's worth it. So to start, this knife was found at Kent of Inglewood, just like the previous knife I talked about, which has a similar appearance. Spear point blade, simple straight handle. So you can see the similarities, but this one is far nicer in construction, looks, and pretty much everything. It was also about twice the price. This was on sale for $28, regular $35, I believe, or $40. So it was a bit more expensive than this one, which was regular $20 on for $15. But this, the Rouennais, I'm still probably mispronouncing that, is a very different design. And I say that because I have never seen a knife with this right here. This groove in the blade. Now, granted, one could argue that these are blood grooves, but I find that incredibly hard to believe, as this is a small slip joint pocket knife, not a hunting knife or battle dagger, so I don't really see what this is for. Also, if you say it's a nail nick, it already has a nail nick. So that can't be. What this is, I'm still unsure, and you can tell me in the comments, but I do actually like the aesthetic that it has. This knife has a very elegant style to it, and reminds me ever so slightly of the, I believe it is known as, oh dear, L'Epicurean, which is a knife by Robert David, I believe, and it's a knife that is supposed to look like a luxury pen. And I believe Stefan Schmalhaus did a video on it, and he's, as you probably know by now, one of my absolute favorite knife YouTubers of all time. Incredibly professional videos that you should absolutely check out after you're done watching this video, which is mediocre when compared. But Stefan talked about how the there goes the name from my mind again. Epicurean. The Epicurean is a knife designed off of a luxury pen, and it's meant to be easily carried in a breast pocket or a bag, and it has a very slender appearance with a simple spear point blade, and has a lot of similarities to this. These are both French knives, of course. However, the L'Epicurean is a fair bit more expensive than the Rouennais. Now, the Rouennais, aside from having an odd name, the cow's tail, is, I believe, again, legal in most places except the UK. I say this because the blade length is a 3.5-inch blade with just a little over 3 inches on the cutting edge. So Not a UK legal carry, which is unfortunate as this is a very pretty knife. But let's go over the fit and finish of this knife. There are some goods and there are some bads, so we'll talk about them both. Starting off with the good, this knife has almost no gapping. I say almost because you could debate that these tiny little marks here are gaps, although they are not large enough for you to fit your nail into, so whether you want to call that a flaw or not is up to you. But aside from that, very smooth, very clean, no sticking up metal edges, so very clean back spring with the steel liners and stainless spring. We have stainless steel pins, and I quite like this, a brass ring around the rivet area on both sides. This was available in 2 handle varieties on Kent of Inglewood's website, although I know that Issard is very famous for offering a huge variety of handles. So you could probably get ram's horn, cowbone, stag maybe, cocobolo, snakewood, ironwood. But the 2 options were olive wood and juniper, and because I have quite a few olive wood knives, I went with the juniper. And it looks quite nice. It's got a nice pattern. I quite like this. I don't have any juniper knives. Well, up until now. This side's a bit lighter. Yeah, very nice handle. And centering. Yes, here's the first issue. The centering on this knife is poor. Quite poor indeed. Also, something I'm starting to be more aware of in knives is, well, warps. You can see that there's a pretty noticeable warp there in the handle. And the 3 issues that I have with this knife, 1 being the warp, 2 being the centering, and 3 is that the blade when closed completely obscures the nail nick. Now this is good, it means no proud tip. But it also means you kind of have to dig the blade out, and then from there, you can open it. Also, please note, with many and perhaps all the Thiers Issard knives and a lot of other regional French knives, closing the edge onto the back spring is very common, because when you snap the blade down, there's no stop pin, and the edge will just hit against the spring, causing chips, dents, and a lot of other negative stuff you do not want happening to your blade. So, yeah, this would be an issue, but just take care when you close it to walk the blade down so you don't get any chips. Blade play is not really a concern. There's some very slight movement, but it's nothing that I'd consider to be a flaw. There's some blade markings here. First says Rouennais. Again, I might be mispronouncing that, but that's how I seem to pronounce it. You've got the crown and the G and R, which are, I believe, the initials of the founder. It says France. It has the Knives of Our Grandfathers mark, which is a series of knives that Thiers Issard makes, which are regional knives that, well, are at least old enough for the grandfathers of the people currently running the company to have had, which means presumably these knives are over 100 years old in design, most coming from the 19th century, and some even older ones coming from the 18th century. So these are some old knife designs. You also have 12C27, which is a super common steel. In fact, I have a bunch of other French knives to compare here, and all of them, yes, every last one, uses 12C27. Here we have a Laguiole Le Fidèle, 12C27. We have another Le Thiers Issard, the Le Thiers. This is also 12C27. And of course, we have the oh-so commonly seen, in my videos at least, the Opinel number 6 in 12C27. So yes, all of the knives here on the table feature 12C27, and heck, this other French knife, the Nogent, that I bought, also from Kent, along with the Rouennais, to my knowledge, also has 12C27. So you can start seeing many different brands here, but yet they all use that one steel. So 12C27 is very common in French knives, which isn't a bad thing. It's very good for corrosion resistance. It is easy enough to sharpen. Takes a very pretty mirror polish. I think the only downside that all of the steel fanatics have is that it doesn't hold an edge for a year. So, I don't know, if you're using if this is a hard use knife that you're going to cut a tree down with, then I apologize in advance, it's going to dull pretty quick. But in the meantime, you have a very slender blade made of 12C27, and in small print, hard to read print, it says made in France. So yes, this is absolutely an authentic French knife with 12C27 Sandvik steel. It's got the Rouennais, it's got France, it's got the initials, and it has the Knives of Our Grandfathers logo. Very busy blade, lots of stuff on it, and on this side there's absolutely nothing. So what are my overall thoughts on the Rouennais, or the cow's tail? I think it would make for a great picnic knife. You know, again, as I said, cutting cheese and meat, it would do a great job. Being a paring knife, I think it also would excel at that. However, I do believe that as just a plain old pocket knife, it would actually work really well. As much as I have issues with some of the knife, such as that warp, the terrible centering, and the fact that the blade sits so very low in the handle to the point where it's hard to get out. Yes, I dislike these things, but the transitions are great. The handles look wonderful. The printing on the blade is easy enough to read. The cutouts are well done. Far less blade play than most knives, and far less gapping than most knives. So you kind of have to weigh out the pros and cons when choosing a knife. You also have to consider these are handmade on a workbench like they would have been 100 or 200 years ago. And I'm not excusing flaws and saying they're handmade. You can get flaws from factory-made knives too. But when you have a knife that the parts and individual ingredients that make up the knife are hand-stamped out or hand-carved chunks of wood, you can expect some irregularities in each individual model. Sometimes there will be slight differences, the maker's mark, so to speak. And my rule of thumb is, unless the feature, by that I mean flaw, unless the flaw affects the function of the knife, I don't care. I just consider it the maker's mark. That warp in the handle might look annoying, but to me, it adds character to the knife, and it doesn't affect how it feels in hand. It still is a very comfy knife. And, you know, the blade sitting low, yeah, that might tick off some really high-end collectors, but I could still get the blade out. It's just a tiny bit of extra effort, so that doesn't bother me. And as much as I begrudgingly put aside my dislike of the centering, it's not scraping, believe it or not, which means the blade isn't getting scratched. And the edge isn't getting harmed, so what flaw is there, really? It's cosmetic, and it really is left up to the eye of the beholder. Whether you choose to accept that flaw or you choose to get mad at it is really up to you as the owner and collector, or user, or both, or all of the above. So really, all in all, yeah, I am surprisingly, despite the fact that I'm a picky collector, I'm impressed. I like this knife. Just like the other Issard I had before, the Thiers model, it had some flaws, and I didn't care. It just felt great in the hand. It felt like a handmade piece of cutlery that went through a process to become a usable knife. This is no different. Yes, I can complain day and night about all the issues, but at the end of the day, do they really hurt your knife? Or do they just hurt your sense of perfectionism? Just something to think about. In the meantime, I am very happy that I got this knife, and I'm even happier by the other two that I bought. Yes, I did. I spent a little bit too much money, and Kent had a sale, and so I bought a few knives while I was there, and a couple more just happened to be Issard. And I'll give you a sneak peek for the next video that'll probably be out tomorrow or the day after. Le Canavo. This one, oh boy, this one I can't wait to talk about. But in the meantime, thank you very much for watching. And yeah, these are still available at Kent of Inglewood, I believe. Sadly, the sale ended after Cyber Monday, but still very inexpensive. Well enough made that I don't really get bothered by the minimal flaws, and still a great carry knife overall, or paring knife, again, however you wish to use it. But nonetheless, thank you very much. Can't talk. Thank you very much for watching. This has been The Knife Raven, as always, signing off. Goodbye.